So now I will. The first part isn't recorded, but at least I will do the rest then. So I won't touch a lot on Crystal, but I will show one of the more advanced things that we are able to do now, and you would typically want to do. You may want to do this if you're starting a report from scratch. There's a more efficient way of doing reports in Crystal using different. Instead of using formulas inside of the Crystal report, you can do that already with commands, which is a more efficient way of doing reports. But then the one thing with that is you need really good knowledge in SQL language. And I'll show one example here just so you can see. This is a report that I opened up. It's the balance sheet that comes with Spire. And I hadn't noticed this before, but we have an option here now. It says SQL expression fields. I am pretty sure that that is a function for a newer version of Crystal, because we never had that here. So I don't even know. I don't even know exactly what that does. That's something I will have to investigate. I just noticed that here. But other than that, I think we're still very much the same. The parameters, much cleaner now. It's more intuitive than before we had the BV and numbers behind it and whatnot. Very old way of doing things. So that's much more intuitive. So back to PG admin 3. So I'll do some things here to show you guys. So I'm developing third-party add-ons for Spire. So there's one thing that I really like. This would be more of an advanced functionality, and I have the queries to execute if you guys ever wanted to do this. I add a new schema, and just briefly explain. A schema is, here again, some of you who are familiar with Microsoft SQL, you have instances, but then everything within one instant, store procedures and whatnot, whatever else you can do in the database, it all belongs into the same what's the word I would use? Same bucket or same structure. So everything that you would do in your database belongs to the same database when you'd go underneath it. One of the advantages here in PostgreSQL, we have schemas. So then you can have your own schema dedicated. So let's say you did some custom work, or even if you wanted to experiment, you did some things in a customer database, creating queries or creating a store procedure or whatnot you would do. You can go and create your own schema inside the database. So then you're never interfering with what's being done, particularly in the public, because the public one, that is the one where Spire has all of its tables. And here when I go to the public one, you see that Spire has 106 tables. They do have sequences. They use sequences. So this is something new as well. Sequences in terms of when adding records to a table to give it a next sequence number. In BV, as you will remember, we have that inside of the application. That's the only place you could go and change it. I suspect that here Spire, I haven't checked, but I suspect that Spire will have it within the application, but you could also go and edit this here in the database. But it's now database driven, the sequence, versus application driven. So there's a lot of benefits in Spire being on PostgreSQL, and that you can start doing a lot of things inside the database that are database driven versus all application driven. So now, as Peter mentioned in his training, now it's already much more towards that end where you have a true client server side application. BV really isn't that. Even though we have the client server edition, it didn't mean a whole lot more than just the standard edition, because the logic in itself was still all in the application. There wasn't really nothing more client side to it than the standard edition. But again, I guess Murray, when they designed Business Vision, they thought it would be a good thing to do to call it client server edition, which really it never was or never hasn't been. So that is more, Spire is more that way, and so that's where you will see a lot more like functions. We see a lot of functions here inside the database, so this is all database driven, so then you already have more logic inside of the database as well. What else do we have here? I think I just happened to see one schema here. It says Matt View, and I know that the head developer at Spire, his name is Matt, so I suspect that's him here, and he named it Matt Views. From what I can tell inside of here, he's using this to convert BV data to Spire. That's what it looks like to me. But the point here is that you can have schemas. You can have your own schema. So if you did any third-party development for Spire, yes, and you did something, you added your own tables inside of the database, these tables would not reside together with the public tables, which is the Spire tables. It does not have to reside in there, and you would never want that. You would, in the first place, you would never want to have those tables reside, your own tables or your own whatever you do in the database, to reside inside the public schema, because what you're doing, you're mixing your tables up with the tables that are in the Spire database, and then if there's ever an upgrade or there's a drop of tables through upgrade scripts, often you have a drop of tables, and then you have a new table being introduced, whatever. So you could easily have your changes overwritten. So you would always want to work in your own schema. And as you would get familiar, so you require some advanced SQL knowledge, you can go and create your own schemas. I will show what I just did here before the call as I got ready for this. I created myself a schema here, audit. I just generally like this, especially in development. This comes in really, really handy to see what's going on inside of a database when you post something in an application. So show you guys. So what it is, what the schema is, it's an audit schema, and this audit schema shows me everything that's happening inside the database when I post something. So for example, I want to see, I want to go and see which tables all get touched and affected, and which way get they affected when I go and create a new inventory item. And let's say I do this for my application that I'm going to go and develop for as a third-party add-on, and I want to see what happens in the database if I create a brand new item. So I'll just do a quick whatever field. So let's see, do we have product codes? Yeah, let's send a product code. Just to make sure that I touch on all tables. Yeah, unit measures here. So I'm going to go and save this. I'm going to close this. So it's 1, 2, 3. So in my audit schema now, I'm going to be able to see exactly what happened in the database while I did this. Inside of my schema, I have a table. It's called logged actions, meaning anything that happened in the database, it's now going to demonstrate me or tell me what happened while I created that record and which tables were touched. Spire is still largely, it's different between more modern application. Not to say that Spire isn't a modern application, but there's still a lot of things in how business vision functions that had to move along, because obviously Spire, they didn't rewrite the whole thing. So generally, and I know that Spire is moving that way because I do see things in the database, but generally in applications you have the interface, and then you have the logic, the business logic that does all of your save this, save that. Then you have your database. And on a lot of modern applications, what you will find, you will have the interface, which is very thin client. There's not a lot to it. It's just basic the interface. And then you have your business logic. You have that inside of the database. So you have a schema, and then like here we see in the public schema, we see a lot of functions. So you would also have sequences, functions, trigger functions. You would have everything in the database here. And I could show you guys an X-tuple database. That's how that one is designed. And considering that is a more modern application from a sense of it started being developed in early 2000s versus something that started back in the early 80s, mid 80s or whatever, early 90s. So that makes them more advantage. There's advantage in having the business logic inside the database. It just makes it more efficient. So Spire is still largely the interface, and the business logic is still largely inside of the application. So with that, in how I do my audits here, it does not tell me exactly what query was triggered. And I'll show you guys here what that looks like. So this is my table. This is my table I created here in my audit schema, so I could see what's going on in the database. So just before the call, I posted something, and then it showed me what was posted, but I'll do a refresh. So these are the tables. When I created this item in Spire, these are the tables that got affected when I created that. So the inventory table says an action is for insert, so it inserted a new record. the inventory UOMs, which is the units of measure, insert a record into that table, and the pricing table. Those were the tables that got affected by what I did here in Spire when I created the 1, 2, 3, 4 item. That's what happened in the database. Very useful when you, again, when you want to do third-party development, or sometimes you're just, even for designing a report. So you are, you know that you want to link something between the vendor and the inventory, let's just say, and I don't know if there would be some link, I suppose, with the vendor. But you want to link something and you're not sure how does that affect the tables, which tables get affected by it, what's being posted. So this schema here will tell you exactly what went on. So here I see, okay, I created a record in inventory. That touched the inventory table, the units of measure, and the pricing. And here I can see action, I is for insert, U is for update, D is for delete, again, insert. So here you can see we inserted three records. And then what it says, the original data, you'll only have that column populated if it was an update, because then it will say what the old data was and what the new data is now. So here in this case, I have 3 inserts, and it shows what the insert was. So when you read this as a data, this means the column. Each time you have a comma, that's the column. So now when I would go, and I'll do it from a query. Yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say select all from inventory, where, what's my field? Let's run this query first so I can see what field I want to do. Part number. So where part number equals, equals 1, 2, 4, quotation, single quotation. In pervasive, no, I'm not even 100%. I think pervasive we can use double quotations, but not 100% sure about that. In any modern database, PostgreSQL, you have to always use single quotations when you do something. In Crystal, you sure can use double quotations, even with Postgres. But inside the database, whenever you run a query, always keep in mind that will give you an error if you use a double quotation. So here I just pulled up this inventory item I created. So here you can see kind of what it did: ID, warehouse, part number, description. So it shows me my columns and what was inserted. Now when I go to my audit table, you'll see here, see 5300 1234 1234 BAT. That's exactly looking at these columns. All it does here, because it's an audit, show me what was inserted. It just inserts a comma, and for each comma, it's a column that you see. This next one here, the query. This is where you get more insight into a database when it's more database driven, when the business logic is actually inside the database. Then you can see what's being inserted. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do this from a query, so I can actually just copy this text and show you in a text document. Select all from, what's that schema called again? Its schema is called audit, and my table name is called logged actions. So here we go. I'm going to do this in the query here so I can show you a bit more, so I can actually copy this to a text editor. So here you see, actually here I was just, and I'll show you the difference actually, just so you guys have an idea. Whenever you're inside of a database here and you're looking at any given table, you can go, let's go to the public here again. You can go inside the table, you can just go and do a right click, and then you can see view data, top 100 rows, 100, all rows, view filter rows, you can even filter. So what this is, it just opens a new window and shows you all your rows. It's a table preview. But then you can do the exact same thing in your query writer, which you start from here. So in whatever database you're in, you just click on this. That's the little SQL button. That is essentially like writing a query inside of Pervasive, the way we used to do it, or still do it. So that opens the query window, and here you can start typing your own query. Select all from inventory like I just did on the other screen. Here on top, it shows you what database you're writing those queries against. And maybe for those of you who are very familiar with doing work in the control center for Pervasive, I'll just pull it up here real quick and show you a little bit how this would work. So as for those of you who are familiar, so you click on ABC, you click on new query, and then we open a window. So this is where I'm starting a new query. And here in the bottom, you can see what database I have selected that I'm running this query against. And then you can go and switch the database by pressing that little button and switching the database to something else and then run a query against that. I've often used that to, you do two things against a database that you may be comparing or whatever. So you switch the database to different queries. Here's the same idea. When you have your query window open, this is where you select your database, what you do it against. And now I'm only connected to one, so I could say new connection and select a new database. And then you can switch between the two once you've added here. So this is the graph. This is the interface for writing queries. And I'll get a bit more into details in the graphic queries. And maybe quickly stop just to see if anybody's asked some questions. No one. So anytime, any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat window. Or you can also unmute yourself and stop and ask. So again, this is my query interface where I can write queries. And that is what I did here. So here I was just previewing the data. Again, I did that from right-clicking on a table and say view data. You can do all kinds of other functions against these tables from here as well. You would want to be familiar with what you're doing here before you would use some of these. But this is essentially what I did is just to view the data. Scripts, very useful function, but that's advanced. I won't get into that. That's a function I wish I would have had many times on Pervasive. But it's too advanced. I won't get into that right now. Okay, so to preview the data, right-click on the table, view the data, but then you can also do the exact same thing inside of your graphic, inside your query window, where you actually have to write the query. And I'll get a little bit into the graphical query builder. I'll get into that as well a little bit. So what I did here, I wrote a query to look at my audit logged action table, and this is where I was at before. So here, where I inserted my record into the inventory table. What's good here, again, going back to the idea of having your business logic in the database, is that you have the ability of actually seeing the query that was executed against the database. Let's do it like this. I'll just open the text. You can see the query that the system executed against your database. So that gives you further insight on potentially what you would want your query to be in a report that you may be working in. So let's look at this here. This is where. So here's where the query started from Spire. So this was the query. I'll erase everything else so that we can better see. Oops, what did I do here? Let's go back. Here we go. Here's where it starts. It's a little bit slow to select it that way. So here I can see the query that was actually executed by Spire that created that record inside of that table. It doesn't give you as much insight here than an application that that has the logic inside the database, but it does. It does help. So you can kind of see insert into inventory, create it, then it gives you the field names. So it does give you some insight when you look at it this way. That may very well help you when you design a report. So you can get a little bit, okay, how did the query execute, especially on an update or delete. Does help to get some insight into that. That is the audit schema. So I have it installed here. I added here by executing queries. I have that. Anybody who's interested in doing that inside the database, let me know, and I'll email you the queries that you have to execute in order to create a schema, and then create the table and the trigger function that does the auditing for you. I can do that. That is for the auditing purposes, so there's some useful information for those of you who want to write reports. The next step, the next thing I'm going to show is the query writer, but I'll use the graphical query builder. So for those of you who may know your very basic select all from inventory or part number, so I'm not like a great at databases. I know my basic queries and stuff, But often when I do want to do something against a database, I still like the graphical interface. And the way I started off in databases way back then, I don't know, I'm aging myself, but it's actually not way back then when I think about 15 years. But so when I started with Microsoft Access to work in databases. And of course, as you know, for those of you who have experience with that, it gives you a nice graphical interface and you can drag fields in, you can do things. This is a similar idea here. I'll leave this one open and I'll leave those queries in and I'll start a new one. Similar idea here, but compares to Access, it doesn't do as much here, but still very helpful to quickly go and write a query. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a query from the inventory table, and then I'll actually use that to build a crystal report using a command. So with the graphic interface, you just expand your schemas, and you have to know where your tables are that you're looking for and which schema. So here, what I'm going to do. Oh, I see they actually have a GL balances. They have a function inside of together with the tables. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my inventory table and I'm going to drag it into here. And this is where I can graphically now build a query. So, okay, I want my ID, table ID. I would have to first check what does that. Let's just preview this data first inside of pgadmin. My inventory table. Let's see what they all have in there. View data, first 100 rows, ID. Okay, I see something new here that I hadn't seen before. It's the way they do the indexing, which is typical database stuff. In the graphical interface, we see some additional, which are technically tables, but inside the database, or inside the table, when you go and look at it, they're hidden. This, I'm sure they're doing that to do something more with this later on. They're not using it right now because we have the IDs in the tables now. So each record in a table has an ID now numbered, which we didn't have in pervasive. And that in itself is also a huge advantage to have the IDs. And from what I can see here, these top fields here up to the ID, they are still hidden over here. They're not showing over here, and they may very well remain hidden for whatever purpose they do. So I don't know exactly their design and what they're going to do, but I can see that this is here for some additional functions already. Pretty sure. I would have to look a little bit more in depth to see. Then we have our ID. So now let's say I want to include my ID, warehouse, part number, description. So I just make a check mark, product code, hold, and let's say we want to do our current cost, average cost, tax code. So let's say I want to include these fields from this inventory table. So now what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to include the unit of measure table as well. Here, so when that time comes, when they're going to start making use of these IDs, so I'm not going to select that, these IDs, then what we will end up doing is when we link tables, we'll always link them at the ID. So you won't have to link. So for example, we would link to a unit of measure from an inventory, we would just have to link this ID to the ID of the unit of measure. Then we won't have to link anymore at warehouse, part number, and whatever unit. We won't have to do that anymore. And now we still have to do it. So that's still the old way, the way Business Vision does it. And I can see how they could never have done this all in the first try where they make use of these IDs. But nevertheless, they've added these to the tables. So they're already there and ready to be used once they start changing some of the business logic to make that use. The IDs, it just makes it so much easier to link one table to another one. From a perspective of instead of multi-links, some warehouse, part number, description, we wouldn't to establish a link, so you wouldn't have to do that anymore. One link between each table, and that's it. That's how it would look. So I'm going to link here at the warehouse. I'm going to link part number, and this is the unit of measure table, and I'm going to link. This is my unit of measure, so I'm going to link this to my inventory unit of measure. And then what I'll do is I'll include this unit of measure description. I'll do the quantity factor as well. Here we won't have anything because I think I only have one unit of measure. So now I've linked a table here with some fields from each table, and then I can go and preview this. I just go and little play button. So it shows me a preview of my query. What has happened here is that you will now see this is the actual query it created. So it generates the query for you. So you do it in the graphical interface. Same idea as Access. So for those of you who use it, you will be able to do it in the graphic interface, and then you have the option of going and previewing the actual query and what it looks like. Same thing here. So you click on the little play button, it takes you to what the query looks like. So here you can spend your time designing your query that you may want to use in Crystal reports. This is where I'm going to show you on how to use a command versus doing a formula in Crystal. Very powerful way of doing reports, and as you will get familiar with designing reports and you will start reports from scratch, I would highly recommend getting used to doing reports more with queries and SQL versus doing formulas. And a report becomes very complex as soon as you do formulas, and you can do that much better in SQL. But again, it requires a good knowledge of SQL if you want to go that route. So what I will do here, I will do a few more things with this. So I have this these fields now that I have part of my report. Now I will go and say criteria. I'm going to go and add a criteria here. I'm just going to say where it's equal. I'm going to go in my inventory, and I'm going to go and say part number is equal to. So here are my operators equal. Between not like we have a number of new some new operators. I think that the I know for sure is not supported with pervasive. Not like is not. In is not in. Not sure. And not in between. I know that one isn't. Is null is not null. I would have to try which ones don't work. I think the between doesn't. You have to use percent symbols if you want to do anything like in between for pervasive, so we have that. So a number of new operators that we have that we never could make use of in pervasive. And so what I'm going to do here, value, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the part number I created before. And then connector, but I will only do this one. I could do a connector here as well. I'm going to execute this, and then now it's asking me if I want to save it because I made changes. Yes. And I got an error. Okay, see, here's already one thing. I didn't do the quotations here. I have to do the quotations before I can execute this query. And still not. Oh, why did it? Oh, it didn't add them. Let's do this again. Let me take it out and do plus. Now let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to click OK. And let's do this again. Yes. There it is. So I had to have it in single quotations now, or I had to put them inside of here. I believe Access, what it actually does, if you don't put them in, and if it knows that it's a string field, it will automatically put them in for you. So here, obviously, it doesn't. So here's my record. This is the record I created before, and these are the fields that I'm showing. So my unit of measure obviously had no description here. And just for the sake of trying something, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go into my unit of measure, and we'll give it a description here, each, and save this. And I will go and execute my query again. And there it is, each. So what I'm doing here is I have linked up the unit of measure tables with the inventory with the unit of measure tables, and I'm linking it up at the unit of measure that's set as inventory that it's stocked in. So here in Spire, when we go inside of here, I only have one unit of measure, but as you will recall from BV as well, we had those little symbols to say, is it the stock unit of measure, is it sell, buy? So if, let's, just for the sake of trying, let's add another one. Let's say case, and then say quantity factor 12 per case, 12 each per case, and then let's save. In Business Vision, you guys will remember that we have a save. When we do anything with the units of measure, we have a separate save button here. That's very nice. In Spire, we only have one save button. It does everything. You don't have to have numerous save button based on what you work on inside of a record. So here I have a case. I will not see this case because I've set this one as my stock unit of measure. So here I can say set as inventory. Oh, and it didn't give me a warning. I know Business Vision always gave us a warning, so I suppose they took that out. Just, I guess, let us intuitively figure it out that you would not want to randomly just go and switch on. Or maybe it's because I don't have anything in stock. That's probably why. Yeah, I don't have. So if I would have had it, would have actually warned me and said that you're converting the stock unit measure to another one. So I'll close this, and now when I'm going to go in execute my query again. So there you see, now my unit of measure is case because I set the unit of measure as my inventory. Quantity factor 1. Why did it not do 12? That's what I told it here, I think. Did that convert itself? Oh yeah, it actually converted itself because it's the stock unit of measure, that's why. Yeah. Now we would have to define it here at the case level if I made that a cell unit of measure as well. So we have our query now. I have built this from 2 tables. Now I'm going to go and take this query into a Crystal report to do a command instead of where we would have typically have used. Oh, and you know what? I don't have an ODBC connection right now, so that would take me a bit long. I won't go through the whole exercise. I'll just show you what a command looks like, just because there's. I have to set up an ODBC connection. I didn't do that. It would take a bit too long to do it now. When you go to the database export, as you will remember, create a new connection. Where is it here? Huh, now I'll have to. Now I'm going to have to find that myself. Yes, it is here. Where is the command? Nope. More data sources. Huh, now I'm going to have to find that myself. I know it is here somewhere. You can create a command. Not with the links. Here, let me just go and start a new report using a wizard as Blink. And current connections. Wait, I think here. Okay, now I'm lost myself. I'm sure it is here. I don't know why I don't see it. That's good. Obviously, I'm well prepared. I would have to find it here, but it's a command, and the way a command works different from a formula. So you can have a formula, and you can tell it to do whatever, do a subtraction group, or take one field from another one, or where equals this, and you can do that all at the command level. And maybe as I'm talking about this here, all of a sudden it will come to me where I'm sure it's done over here, and I don't know why I don't see it. Maybe there's something extra to enable. And then you can use your queries that you create here. You can actually use these queries that you create here, and you create a command in Crystal. And then from the command, so here I have, here in my query, I have a limit number of fields. So I have, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 or so. From the command, you add this query, and then once you've added the command, it shows up under database fields as well. And then you're only working with the fields you've selected in your query. So here we have a limit number of fields, and that's all I have in my query. So when you come over here and add it as a command, that's all you have. Then you don't have to worry about all these extra fields. So you can already sort through that in the database, and you don't have to worry about all these extra fields that you accumulate, or that you are part of a table to write your report. Again, it's a very efficient way of writing reports, but it does require some more advanced knowledge. And just because I think I'm a little bit determined to know why I don't see Create command. Now I will give you guys a secret. Just so that you know, whenever you get lost on something you don't know, you can always use Google to search for it, to find what you're looking for. So that's a little secret that I'm giving away here. And I hope that you're all buying it too. Let's see. Create a command. Oh, that's maybe a little bit. Let's see. Okay, I know what I'm missing. So basically what I had to do first is I have to add a data source. So let's just add, I don't have a pervasive, I don't have a connection set up here for PostgreSQL, but I'll just take, I'll take any here just so I can show you guys. So here, just go on OBC. This is ABC. This is the electronics company. So once I've added my data source, then I have the option of adding a command against that database. So I go and add a command, and then it pops up this window. You can do parameters against a command as well. You can create your parameters here, and then these parameters will work same way as the parameters that we do in the field. So then you don't have to create them inside the report either. You can do your where statements here like I did. I did all of this here in my query. So now that becomes part of my command. So now all of a sudden I have, so it failed, of course, because I'm not connected to the right ODBC database. It doesn't know where these tables are. Now, once you've created your command, then you can start adding these fields to the report. And sometimes something that would have sometimes taken us maybe say 3 or 4 groups that we would have created. So first we wanted to group by customer, and then we wanted to group by, or let's say use inventory. Let's say we first wanted to group by inventory, warehouse, then inventory, then maybe the vendor inside the inventory. Well, we wanted to group by all of these, so it would have sometimes taken us, and as you will see some of the some of the reports in business, you'll see that sometimes AdWord has like 10 groups to accomplish something. With the commands, as you learn how to use these, you can sometimes do a command, you can finish it all in SQL, one screen, so when we're looking at a command, this would be your command here, or a query that you would use inside our command. One query versus coming into Crystal and having 10 groups with who knows how many formulas that do certain things in each group, and header for this, and at the bottom you group this together and you add that up to as a total. You could, and again, you'd have to get fairly good at SQL language, writing queries. You could do that all inside of a query in one query. So now let's say you had one query and you do all of this. That means that when you come and you want to change something, you're going to come inside that query and you're going to look at this one query to go and make a change to it, versus having to go and perhaps look at somebody else's report that they did, like AdWords report. You have to go and dig through who knows how many formulas, and okay, what does this formula do? What does that formula do? And go back and forth between the formulas to see if you can sort things out. Here, now you have it in one window. So you could have this in a text editor. I use, for those of you who want to get into writing queries and haven't done this before, I use Notepad++, very nice for writing queries. You can go and paste a query, and then you can go and say the language. So this is SQL. And then it highlights based on the operators. It highlights, and so then you know what you're writing. So if I add say a bracket here and a bracket here, if you have something within brackets, you go and put your mouse cursor behind it so you know exactly what's in brackets and stuff. Very useful little text editor, and I use it a lot for queries, or even I take a query and I paste it into here just to get a better visual of what the query all does. My point is that you do this one query, you do all of your logic inside of this query, and you use that in your report. Again, very simple. You see everything in one screen, what you want to add it, and you find your way through it a lot easier than doing your multiple formulas and, again, sorting through them, finding your way through them. And So it's a very powerful way of writing reports, and I highly encourage people to get into writing reports like that. Very useful. That is all I had, and I will check the chat here. If any of you want to ask any questions, also you can unmute yourself and ask, or just type in a question. I was expecting a number of other people. Maybe they forgot. I know on the forum there were some more people, maybe one or a few people who are interested. I also got emails, or an email, I believe, emails, a few of them. So not that many people join. Obviously, it's Friday afternoon. Maybe Monday would have been better. Any questions? I can also unmute everyone. Oh, I have one question. Let's see. Gara, thanks for the presentation. You mentioned the presentation of Crystal Spire. Do you have a copy? Do you have a copy of the link? Or it works. Peter says Peter. Yeah, that was one of the things. Charles, that's yeah, I've had that discussion with Peter as well. I think that will come down to permission. But also, I think I've had that discussion with Peter regarding changing part numbers or even customer numbers, and there are certain limitations that will be there on that. And the reason is that sometimes you break certain accounting logic when you change something inside of when you change, say, a record, a name. Let's see more. Let's look through all of my Spire systems. Spire, let's look at videos. Did that Spire backup and restore? They didn't publish this Crystal report. Here, I have a closed case backup restore. Okay, who was it asking for the? Oh, Romy, so you were asking for are you asking for a link to the video that Peter did on reports? I think that's what you're asking for, right? Yes, so here, let me find it for you. It doesn't look like they, does not look like they published that in YouTube to be accessed from their channel, but here, I'll find it for you real quick. I'll give it to you right away. Software Spire. For those of you who've been using the help desk from Spire, very nice. I actually started using that myself for my customers to do tickets for customers. They have a forum here. I think there's a lot of good things coming here in their portal. So again, I use it myself. Let's do, so where was my ticket that I opened for this? All tickets. Oh, here. So it was actually where I asked about here is the link. Where I asked about, oh, they took that video down. That's no longer available. Huh. Okay, so now you know, Romeo. I watched it. I think earlier this week. I watched the video and it's no longer posted. So they took it down for whatever reason. Maybe they decided to do a better video for this. So yeah, it's gone. No more video. I got to see it at least. Yeah. Any other questions? I can also unmute if anybody, or you can unmute yourself. Yeah, I think so too. Like the video was pretty well done. Peter was doing the crystal. Okay, Charles, I think you guys are chatting privately, so the other people aren't seeing the chats here. Romy wanted to see the video for the crystal training that Peter put on from a week or two ago. And here, this is where I went and looked up the link, and that video is gone. So they'll probably post a better one. So yeah, we'll have to ask Al about the training on Crystal. Most likely they're going to produce a better one. Charles, what about phrasing the array fields in Crystal? That is beyond me. So you got me on that one. I am not 100% sure about that. No, actually, okay, I know what you're referring to. You could do that. Yeah, now I know what you're referring to. Sorry. You could do, instead of doing array fields in Crystal, you could do that all in SQL. And if you wanted to see, what can I show you here? I can show you something from Xtuple, and that even that's to the point of where it is beyond me. But I can show you just to see, so you can see what that looks like. Yeah. So I know you. Yeah. You wouldn't even have to create a view for that. Let me see if I have. Need to log into Xtuple. I could show you something, and where you do some very advanced. Let's take a look at this one, see if I can log in here and pull up the report writer. Oh, and here my registration is expired, so I can't get in there. What do I have on my notebook here that I could show you? Let's see if I have a database here. Try this. So Xtuple has its own report writer, and at one point I know that Peter and Al talked about integrating that into Spire, but they said that they found some limitations in there that they didn't like, and yeah, so everybody has their own preferences in report writing. So obviously they didn't like it. I find it pretty good. It's from an interface. It's more intuitive. So what we see in Crystal, it's more like you get what you see type of thing, report writer. So here, insert document query sources. Let's see how much. See this one. So here is what it would look like in real life when you talk about arrays. This is a query that you actually. This is exactly the same thing as if you were to create a command. I really like this about this report writer. But here we're looking at a query, and this is what that query does. Instead of having multiple formulas, a group. So you essentially create your different groups and you drag them into the appropriate section. Here we have a group header, but it actually is only labeled, so we don't have anything that prints in here. So yeah, that's where. So yes, you can do that all in a query. So if you're really good at SQL queries, you could do that all inside of a query and then use a command for that, versus again doing that as a separately creating every function, whatever it does, or array fields or that type of thing. So number one, being good at SQL, that will take you a long way. Any more questions? Okay, Romeo, do you know, can Spire install run on one workstation similar to like when a Business Vision Limited Edition would be installed? If so, does both the PostgreSQL Server database just get installed on the one station? Yes. Yeah. So let me just make sure I understand your question. Yeah. So yeah. So your database only needs to install on the server, wherever the database can be running on. So as you'll know, when we install Business Vision, we are installing, and let me know if I'm not understanding you correctly. If we are installing Business Vision, Pervasive installs itself, like the database engine installs itself with the application. That's not the case for Spire. Maybe Spire, they do that. I don't see a reason why they would. Maybe there's a requirement for that. That I'm not 100% sure. But the PostgreSQL database does not to be installed on every workstation I know that's the case for Xtuple. So again, I would have to actually look into it, maybe ask the question. But similar idea. If you did limited edition, you would install Postgres on that same workstation, and you could run it. So there's no need to have a server for PostgreSQL. And same way, if you had multiple people accessing, you only have it installed on the server. Yeah. So Charles, you're correct. If it's a single PC, then yes, Postgres installs on the same PC. Yeah. So you still run it the exact same way. One user environment. There's no need to get them onto an expensive server or running it on a server. Any other questions? If not, then we'll end it. I did record this, so if anybody is interested, I can post that on my YouTube channel. You're very welcome, and then we'll chat again sometime. You guys have a good weekend.